I'm Dan.
And I'm Alex.
And we are so excited to welcome you back to On Air because it is episode 50. How does it feel, Alex?
You know, it feels like just 50 minutes ago that we launched the podcast, and here we are with the On Air family in the top 2% globally. Dan, it's amazing. We've still got so much left to say. I mean,
I know.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. When we gather 5 minutes before we hit record, and this is kind of the behind the scenes part, I guess, is that we're on the line, we're connected, and we're about to press go so that we start the episode, and we have a quick discussion about what we're going to say. And that usually involves chopping down a list of about 30 things to about 5 things. So there was us, a few years ago wondering, would we have enough to say on the podcast? But I think when you mix, you with me, it can only ever be too much.
Yeah, I think the funny thing though is that we're becoming kind of podcast senile grandpas because we have so much to say and we have so many anecdotes left, but at the same time I'm like, did I tell this story before? Because it's getting really hard to keep track.
It is getting hard to keep track of the anecdotes, and I listen to many other podcasts, and not just ours, obviously. I don't really listen to ours. And when I listen to all the podcasts that I subscribe to and the hosts say, oh, I think I told this story before, I'm always shouting at the phone like, yes, you told us 6 months ago. And now I'm thinking, shit, this is what's happening with us. Maybe flag it to us, guys, if we're going on again about, whatever.
Yeah, I just can't believe it's been a year of On Air. Honestly, it's been more than a year because I think we've missed 2 weeks or so in an entire year of doing a podcast, which is insane to me that we've managed so well. But yeah, it is good because that was our worry, wasn't it? About not about the commitment, but about the commitment to being able to manage the time zones, the technology, the hotel Wi-Fi, there have been some moments where you and I are intensely texting because we're like, no, it seems impossible, but in 5 minutes we will have a solution. And we're going back and forth with each other. And, I'm grateful that you're super accommodating. I match that accommodation in terms of, you're also very accommodating. So
it's a team effort. We have to do it so that we can find the time. And if one of us has to stay awake until really late, then it's better me than you because you fall asleep. So
and for me, vice versa, I'd rather do it early in the morning. But yeah, it's crazy because when I think back at the first episode when we sat down to record for the first time, I was like, I just thought, how is this going to go? I have never been a host of a podcast before. Neither have you, obviously, but you have a bit more live TV experience. So I was just dreading, like, what is it going to be like talking for an hour unscripted? And it turned out, I think even after ending the first episode, we were both like, this turned out so much better than we expected. So I
just had that, I had that dread, that feeling in my stomach because I couldn't believe I had agreed to any kind of arrangement where the title had my name second rather than first. It's just, that's probably when people say, you sacrifice, it's a good thing in order for longevity and for the greater good and whatever. And there I am having to be convinced by Dan that Dan and Alex is correct, despite, me liking alphabetical order. A comes before D. My twin sister, her name is Demi. So I think the vast majority of people refer to us as Alex and Demi, not least the fact that I'm 1 year, goodness no, I'm 1 minute older than her, and she doesn't forget that.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, it's actively and routinely a pleasure. And speaking of the last year, that's exactly how long I feel I've been in Canada.
I know. I'm literally on the phone with immigration services right now to see it. Do you guys know if this Alex guy is overstaying his visa? Because I'm getting concerned.
No, I'm fully in line with I love this system here it's very easy, the ETA, and the fact that there's not even for British passport holders like I am, you don't have the paper copy or anything like that. It's just linked with your passport. But not having anything in paper does lead me to every single time I'm traveling to Canada, do that crazy. Wait, it is still valid, isn't it? And I know that it's valid for several years, but I have to go onto the system and screenshot that, the evidence, because they say to you, this is not evidence. It's digitally linked with your passport number. There is no paper evidence for your whatever. But I'm like, you know what? I'll screenshot that because it says valid. So.
Yeah, I find that so funny because it's the same in the US with their ESTAs. And Oscar, who's not a US citizen, has to get an ESTA. And as you say, it's connected to your passport. But I would say 9 out of 10 times when we're checking in about to fly to the US, they go, can we see your ESTA, please? And it's like, there's no such thing as showing your ESTA because there's no paper. So he just shows like a screenshot, like you said, of the confirmation. But
that specifically says, I don't know about the US ESTA one. It's been, I don't go into the US on an ESTA. I have the B1, B2. But I mean, if it's like the Canadian one, it specifically says like, this is not your, so-called visa or visa waiver. But yeah, that's what they ask. Every time I travel to Canada, they don't actually ask me at check-in. In fact, there's no conversation at all about eligibility to enter. I find that really interesting when I'm traveling to Canada. There's no mention because I guess they can just see it, right?
Yeah, I think it's also the airports you're flying from. You're usually flying direct from airports that have flights to Canada. So I think normally we encounter those problems when we're connecting from an airport that doesn't have flights to Canada, like Gothenburg. Okay. And, flying
Gothenburg,
through
which
wherever.
Made its debut. I mean, did you Photoshop that?
No.
What was that?
Explain actually, our listener, Chris, sent this to us. So he listens to the podcast. So I was like, Chris, you have found something that legitimizes Gothenburg to the highest degree. So
shit.
I don't think any of you guys will have missed that Apple had their big event where they revealed the new iPhones, and on the website, on the official Apple website for iPhone 16 Pro, there's a screenshot that says personalize your home screen, and then in the calendar, if you peek closely, it says Monday the 9th at 7:30 p.m. flight to Gothenburg.
Unbelievable.
So Oscar and I
How
were
much
discussing.
Did they pay? Were you behind this? No. I'm serious. How of every place how did Gothenburg end up on the? I'm looking at it now. You just sent it to me. That's insane.
So I'm literally not joking. When Oscar and I were discussing, I have only one theory, which it's almost like impossible to believe. But do you think that whoever made that ad listens to the podcast? I'm not joking. Because it's almost good. Like there's no other reason. Apple has no connection to Gothenburg. It's don't forget,
right? It's not, dinner reservation in Gothenburg.
Yeah,
flight. Or doctor's appointment in Gothenburg. It's flight to Gothenburg.
Yeah. Can you imagine if you made this ad and you listen to the podcast, please message us.
Please press the call button in the panel above your head now, and one of the crew will be over shortly to bring you to Dan and I. What the hell? I love that theory.
Yeah, I mean, because it's so
that's
random.
That's highly suspicious. Yeah.
It's not only random, it's the most random because Apple is all about California. There's no direct flights to Gothenburg from California. So I don't know, but I love it. That's... yeah, a quick reminder of a slightly more irrelevant place. But anyway, back to Canada. We spoke a lot about Air Canada last week, and now they're in the news again. And I just hope you have time to make it back wherever you're going before what's about to go down goes down.
Well, this is all over the news here, but it's also now making global headlines, which is that Air Canada is actively preparing to shut the airline down, not for good, as Dan asked me when I sent him this. Dan was like, for good. I was like, no, not for good. What are you talking about? Can't quite believe he said that. Anyway, but anyways, actively preparing to shut the airline down temporarily because of the upcoming and widely expected pilots walkout that will see as many as 5,000 pilots strike over the wage negotiations that have been underway for quite a while now. The kind of the crux to all of this is that they Canadian pilots, or rather pilots working at Canadian Airlines, want to be paid at the same rate and kind of the likes of their counterparts, the pilots across the border in North America in the United States. So US pilots are paid more than pilots in Canada, and so
And pretty
these
much anywhere
negotiations.
else, right? They're
Yeah,
just
that's
bathing in
true.
money.
Yeah. So and so ultimately in Canada they want them to match the the rates that you're getting just across that land border. And there have been many cases whereby pilots have had their early careers at airlines in Canada. And we're not just talking about Air Canada, but you've got a whole bunch of other airlines as well. You've got the smaller ones like Porter, you have WestJet, and so many others, and they ultimately then leave and go across the border, and if they can, they get a job at a US carrier because they are paid more. And there are some examples where if you are a mainline pilot for Air Canada, so for example, you're not working for an Air Canada subsidiary like Jazz, who operate their kind of short either domestic or trans-border routes, so for example Montreal to LaGuardia in New York, or Air Canada Rouge or Air Canada Rogue as I call them. You're not working for those, but you're working for the actual main line, the traditional Air Canada, and you have a contract from Air Canada, and you're flying internationally to places like London and Athens, Nice, Geneva. You are paid more flying domestically for a US carrier in the US, and that's understandably their issue. And so it seems that these negotiations are not going well. I'll read you, as of now, the pilots at both the mainline Air Canada and also Air Canada Rouge have been offered a pay rise by up to 30%. But the union representing the majority of their pilots want to see that rise by something a little closer to 45%. If they are unsuccessful in these negotiations, then there will be a 72-hour strike warning, and then there will be that walkout. And if there is that walkout, the earliest that it will occur will be from the midpoint of September. So I think the earliest is around September 15th or 16th that strike warning could go out, and then could commence very shortly after. Then there would be such massive disruption at the airline, then it actually wouldn't be able to function. And Air Canada is currently drawing up plans, as I said in the intro, to shut down the airline temporarily as a result of this ongoing dispute.
Well, so if you're a passenger who's planning to fly Air Canada and this actually goes ahead, keep in mind if you're flying from Europe, since the strike is within the control of the airline, you will be entitled to compensation. So make sure you note that even if you get rebooked and you arrive at your destination later than planned, you can get compensation. Air Canada also has a decent no, not Air Canada, but the country of Canada has a decent compensation system too, but it's not quite as thorough as Europe. So I haven't read exactly what applies if you're flying Air Canada and the pilots are striking in terms of their compensation, but I'm sure it will be easy to look up. And yeah, I guess if you're flying to or from Canada, just be aware and keep your eye on the news.
I'm now actively plotting my way out of it, because of course I did position out here with Air Canada, and it is, I mean, so wherever I am, I turn on local news on the TV or on radio just to kind of hear what's happening locally. And I always find the nice part about Canada is some of the stories that are on the national news are such tiny local news stories that I can't quite believe they've made the headlines. But I guess that's a nice thing, because you turn on the headlines in Europe and you're like, my God, it looks like a horror film. But
yeah,
true. With what's going on.
But whenever there's a strike like this and a lot of flights end up being canceled, I always end up thinking about the flights that actually go ahead with other airlines, for example, where everyone is getting rebooked. I just feel so bad, because you know that every single seat is taken. So yes, people are making it, but it's going to be as uncomfortable a flight as you can get. Those who are in business class and whatever are extremely lucky in those situations, because it's not too rare, especially now as the summer season is ending, to get a few empty seats in economy and you can stretch out a bit. I know several people have had a whole row to themselves in the past few weeks. So in those situations, it just gets even more uncomfortable, which has kind of inspired us to talk about what are the best economy class products in the sky as of second half of 2024, and which airlines would you be luckier to fly than others?
And the reason I wanted to have this discussion is because this changes very often. So I think that as we are now in this second half of the year, let's look at what the state of play is. We can do it by region, by continents, or whatever, but I want us and the listeners to properly know where now, and you're super helpful with this because you do fly every airline under the sun. You know, I'm a little bit more selective, but you
Nice
fly so many
choice.
carriers that it is of value because it does change all the time. And don't forget, why does it change all the time? It's not because airlines just wake up and decide we're going to be better or we're going to get worse, but it is all a lot to do with, you know, the introduction of new aircraft as you get fleet expansions and aircraft orders that are finally translating now into deliveries coming from the likes of Airbus, Boeing, and Embraer, and so on. Just one thing on that. Speaking of that, I noticed, obviously I've been using Flight Radar as I do all the time here, and I love trying to spot other, you know, traffic, unusual air traffic that I don't often see. So first point is that I never see aircraft over Montreal. Never.
Really?
Because of where downtown Montreal is and the approach pattern for the airport, you just never see an aircraft in the sky, which I'm just not used to.
Which makes me sad because I feel like, I don't know about you, but as a kid, when I lived in London, like that's part of what made me love aviation, seeing planes flying over the city all the time.
Well, also, the weather has been fantastic, right? Apart from the weekends. It's very suspicious how this works, by the way. The weather has been beautiful, clear 4K HD, 27 degrees, Monday to Friday. And the moment Saturday comes, it's like torrential rain, the lowest ceiling of cloud cover. Then the Sunday is always Arctic and absolutely freezing. This Sunday just gone, I went on an early hike up Mount Royal and everyone was in like woolly hats and mittens and the puffer jackets were out. And I was thinking, this is crazy because then it's now the weekdays again and the weather is once again fantastic. So I don't know what Trudeau is up to, but anyway, so God, I went off onto a tangent, but no aircraft in the skies because of just how the approach pattern is. You just very rarely see any overflying aircraft. When I did, because I was out of downtown driving elsewhere, I was like, is that an E2, an Embraer E2? Which of course it was, belonging to Porter. Yes.
Porter.
And so Porter, or how should I say?
Porter. I know it's awkward to say it without a North American
double
accent.
R.
Yeah, Porter.
Because like it's not Porter.
Well, you could say that. I mean, that's how you would say it with a British accent, but it's Porter
Airlines.
Yeah, that's fine. It's fine.
Anyways, so it was Porter, and they have E2s now, which I just find fascinating given they seem to fly them on super short routes. Like the one that I was tracking was just going to Toronto, and the other one was going to, you know.
Oh my God, no, but they fly it to LA.
Do they use
places.
them? Oh, okay, this was my next question. So when I had looked at where they were airborne, they were all going kind of locally, but I wanted to know, and I didn't bother finding out because I have you. Do they fly them to the West Coast? Are they doing those 5-hour journeys on those
which
E2s?
is obviously absolutely horrible to end up on a regional jet on a 5-hour flight. Doesn't matter how good the airline is. That's just something to avoid. The A220 is a different thing, I would say. And
love that. Sporty mini A350.
100%. But the fact that airlines to some extent choose between the A220 and the Embraer 195 E2, for example, is crazy to me because they're not comparable at all in terms of passenger comfort. The latter is a regional jet. The former is fine on a longer flight because of the seats. It's just nice to have a 2-3 configuration. The cabin feels very airy, as we've said. But of course, Air Canada on the same route, like Toronto to LA, flies 787s. So the choice is pretty obvious if you're in a premium cabin.
Well, I noticed they send everything as well. I noticed they send everything to Toronto as well. So because I was looking at maybe having to go to Toronto, and I noticed they had a Dreamliner on one flight, then they had like a Dash 8 on the other flight. And I was like, quite the difference. Like the Dash is the size of the landing gear of the 787. So I'm thinking, God, do they do aircraft swaps a la Middle East Airlines? And am I going to be like stuck on a Dash when I could have been on a Dreamliner and vice versa? And so that's interesting.
No way. They don't do those types of equipment swaps. And frankly, I don't think they do equipment swaps really at all. That's not a thing in North America as
Wonderful.
much. So it's much more
You say
reliable.
that, but when I was potentially going to New York, that aircraft swapped twice before I'd even, before the flight
Between
date
what?
arrived. Between Montreal and New York, it had swapped from an Embraer 175 to a CRJ, and then back to a 175. And then, so that was one swap, two swap, and then finally stayed on an A220. When the date came, I didn't fly. When the date did come and I checked, it was a 175 all along. So I don't know why in the system it changed 2 or 3 times. Maybe they knew I was.
Yeah, maybe it's specifically New York since it's such a frequent route. I don't know, but it is nice
Yeah.
that they do send wide bodies on such short flights, and it's kind of surprising given that
But,
Canada
like,
is
the-
not that populous, but I guess they
Yeah.
fill the flights.
Not that
obviously.
populous. There's only 30 million people in the world's second largest country.
Yeah.
I mean, it's staggering, isn't it? There's 70 million people in the UK.
Yeah.
And the UK is a slither of Canada, geographically.
And then you get
also,
like
as you say,
A319s domestically.
yeah, well, that was the thing, because when I'm looking at where these A319s and these, Porter E2s you're now telling me are flying, I'm thinking, yeah, okay, I take A380s on those routes. If it's like above 5 hours, I'm from Paris to the Gulf or something, it's like A380. If I'm boarding an E2, well, I think I'm not boarding, am I? So
Yeah.
let's
Exactly.
anyway, let's go back to what we wanted to discuss, like the state of play in economy. First things first, if you're giving that kind of one hit key bit of advice, let's imagine you're on a morning show, it's Good Morning America, and they're like, Dan, where are we now? What is the world's best economy class
Well,
currently?
Well, there's one way to, because obviously it depends which regions you're flying between. But there, in my opinion, and we discussed this a bit before, is there's one sure way to know you'll be as comfortable as possible, whatever the airline. And that is, of course, to look for an Airbus A380. So whether you're flying BA or Asiana or Qantas or Qatar or Emirates, of course, you always want to try to be on an A380 because in terms of their fleets, those will be the most comfortable aircraft. And then the second step, the slightly more advanced step, is to look for the airlines, if you want to be truly comfortable, but also probably have to pay more, look for the ones that have economy class on the upper deck, because that is where it gets truly good if you're sitting by the windows, because you get a huge storage bin along the side where you can put all your stuff. It's very quiet, very stable, very sort of intimate cabins up there. So that's the number one piece of advice, regardless of airline, I would say.
And while the A380s are in service, try if you can, if you're airline and they fly on the route that you're looking for, try and fly on the A380 because it's usually the best in all cabins, but definitely in economy. And to give a quick flavor of what you had just said about the upper deck economy being the real game changer because of the way they reduce the configuration and the layout of seating in order to maximize space for the passenger, but also because they can't squeeze in on the upper deck what they would on the main deck. Which airlines are doing this? So British Airways, off the top of my head, Qatar Airways, of course, with dedicated economy class cabins at the rear of the upper deck. Who else?
Well, those are actually the ones I've tried. I'm sure there are others, but none off the top of my head, because obviously
Emirates also have Emirates
Oh,
on
they
some
do.
on some A380s have
on very
economy class on the
few-
upper deck.
on a few A380s that don't have first class, they put it on the upper deck at the front,
So
which is interesting.
Gatwick receives them quite a bit, I think.
Yeah, Gatwick,
And,
Manchester, Birmingham.
Bangkok.
I think they all.
Yeah.
Bali is only that type of A380. Mauritius. It goes all over the place, but that's a bit more. It's easier to say just on a BA A380, this is what you're going to get. And I just have to say quickly about that Emirates thing. I find it so interesting when you look at every other airline that has economy on the upper deck, it's always in the very back of the upper deck. But because Emirates has the bar, they put that in the same place they always put it, which is at the very back. So on British Airways, for example, it's so interesting comparing how many seats did they manage to squeeze, for example, back where Emirates puts just the
Have
bar. So
it's funny, isn't it?
on BA, I count 4 rows of 8 seats across. So That's 32 seats where there's just a bar on Emirates back there.
It is amazing, and we've spoken before and recently about the use of space, but when you then have flown in a premium first and business cabin, and then the next flight you fly in economy, you then have that moment where you count how many rows were actually, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, that was that was just the width of the door, or that was and actually how many passengers they're able to have sit in that same amount of space.
And that's always what's so sneaky when airlines are reconfiguring their fleets, especially now many are adding premium economy or improving their business class. And a lot of the time, what we end up seeing is a very suspicious not reduction in economy class seats. So you'll see we're adding 24 premium economy seats, and we're changing from a terrible old business class to a 1-to-1 configuration, and it's going to be the same number of seats. But then it's like economy is somehow only losing 8 seats or something like that. And then obviously that is usually coming at the expense of legroom in economy, or we've spoken about this a few weeks ago in terms of how airlines try to make space as efficient as possible. And as time goes on, airlines find more ways of doing that. So sometimes it means removing a couple of bathrooms to accommodate the increased number of seats, or moving bulkheads around to make things more effective, or even removing bulkheads so that where there's a door, the seats just sort of continue in the middle. And then there's just a short break for the door by the windows, and then the seats continue.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's anything is possible, and I think a lot of people they're not quite aware of just how much is possible. Everything is an option, everything is a decision, everything is available inside that catalog when airlines are configuring. And also, if it's not in the catalog, well, then there is a design agency ready to put it to make it from scratch with a supplier and build that dream that the airline has, whether it's to cram in more seats or to give you an unparalleled, sense of space and service. The biggest innovations that we have seen in economy class a lot of them have come, in terms of commitments, have come from one carrier that I'm thinking of down in New Zealand. Of course, Air New Zealand have always been really economy class focused when it comes to ensuring comfort. And they, of course, have the SkyCouch, where you're able for an extra fee to have that whole row of economy seating that then has kind of comfortable plush panels, if you like, pullouts that come from beneath the seat to extend the size of the seat cushion that you would typically be sitting on. And what it does is it extends it across all three, basically making it more mattress-like. And then you get beautiful bedding, and you're able to have a really decent sleep on a very, very comfortable product. And that is not something that is new. This has been about forever. But Air New Zealand, it seems again, by themselves, will again be recommitting. And we know this is already been announced. We've already discussed it on the podcast with the Sky Nest concept, which is kind of like bookable double beds. But the interesting part is, just like everything in the industry, it is delayed again because it is tied to new aircraft deliveries. And we've touched on this, haven't we? Which is that while airlines may be planning for a launch of a certain new cabin or a certain new seat, ultimately, if they are launching it on a new aircraft or an aircraft that is yet to be delivered, then that timeline as to whether or not or when it's going to arrive is entirely at the hands of the supplier, which of course Airbus and Boeing are not, both of them are not in great shape at the moment in terms of being able to commit to deliveries. Of course, Airbus are in a far better shape than the likes of Boeing, which is in the middle of a crisis right now. But with both of them sharing so many common suppliers, and the suppliers struggling ever since the pandemic, then we know that both get affected. So the Sky Nest, which is debuting with Air New Zealand, is going to ultimately be here on the 787 Dreamliner that Air New Zealand have on order, and that's now been moved to 2025. And again, that's that commitment to passengers that you can do economy class a little bit differently. So you'll be pre-booking time in those capsules, in those compartments. They're ultimately a bit like crew rest bunks, which already exist on the aircraft, little sleeping pods, but they're for passengers. So that Dan, that if you've got an ultra long haul flight with Air New Zealand and you really need, that guaranteed 4 hours of deep sleep, well, then you don't have to stress so much about having it in your seat because you've got a 4-hour slot booked in your bunk. So when we are talking about economy class, I really think Air New Zealand's commitment to passengers in this area has been something that deserves credit, especially for how long that commitment has lasted and continues to last as they include it in their future plans.
Yeah, but the wildest thing about that is that of all airlines in the world that literally have no competition due to their geographic location, besides maybe one airline, it's Air New Zealand. So you'd think that someone like US carriers, for example, would introduce it, but no, it's literally the most remote major airline in the world, which is just so interesting. And then there are some other airlines that have similar concepts, but they don't have the seats that fold up. So Air Astana lets you pay extra. Air Astana is the national carrier of Kazakhstan. They let you pay extra for what they call economy sleeper, which is basically just you get your own row of 3 seats and they give you bedding, but the seat doesn't extend at the bottom, which is what makes Air New Zealand's seat so special. And I find it kind of sad that no other airlines have embraced something like this. And Air New Zealand has been doing it for decades. So clearly it's successful because they keep introducing it on their new aircraft. In the Air Astana scenario, the Kazakh airline, would you, assuming you were flying on that economy sleeper bundle where basically you are given the whole row plus bedding, would you recline all 3 seats? Well, you're supposed to be lying down across them, right? So
yes, but when you recline, it pushes out the seat cushion to give you greater width. So to give you exactly. So on many economy class seats, when you recline, it's not only isolated to the back of the seat reclining, but it then pushes out the seat cushion further forward in order to just give a bit more support kind of under your thighs. And so assuming you're sitting upright. And so I ask you, would you extend and recline all 3 seats to give yourself a wider sleeping area, almost like mattress, if you like, at the cost of the passengers behind you who might be thinking, what the hell are you doing? You're one person. Why are you reclining 3 seats?
That's tough. I think for me, this whole concept doesn't work because I'm too tall for 3 seats to be enough.
Oh God, I forgot. You need about 6.
Yeah,
you lay across 3 seats and your legs are across the aisle and onto the 4th seat, onto the D aisle seat.
Literally. So I think it depends how tall you are, because for someone who's 5'2", this is a perfect concept. This would be amazing. Yeah. But for someone like me or even your height, it doesn't quite make sense because it would still be quite uncomfortable, but you're paying extra. At least on Air New Zealand, you get more width, which is great. But still, this is probably something that's a bit better for shorter people than someone who's very tall. But we need to get to the question of which airlines have the best economy.
Yeah, go on. Well, it's as is probably evident by now, there is no clear answer, but yes, let us try.
Yeah. Okay, let's just go by region, quick kind of thing. So
let's start with Europe.
Europe, Virgin Atlantic, I would probably say on the 350.
Yeah.
It's hard because I really honestly haven't flown many European airlines in economy recently, but I know, what other airlines have we heard?
Well, I think,
I just know which ones to avoid. That's the crazy thing.
There's I don't think I would actively recommend the Lufthansa Group economy classes.
Definitely not.
For long haul, because they are quite aggressive in the chase for margins.
But I have to say, many of my favorite airlines have terrible economy class products, like Finnair, which I think is great in business. Their economy, you'll barely get any food. On SAS, there's one choice for meal, at least until very recently.
Sounds like my 10K business class flight on Air Canada, $10,000.
Yeah.
God.
So but the good thing about Europe, here's why we don't have to choose one in Europe, is that wherever you're going long haul, there's always an option to fly a different airline and connect. So
A foreign airline, yeah.
Exactly.
So there is always a non-European airline out of there.
But if you
right?
can, I mean, at least the Lufthansa A380 or British Airways A380, you're getting more comfort thanks to the aircraft type. So,
Well, that was going to be my answer. So where you said Virgin Atlantic A350, if I had to give an answer for Europe, I would say the upper deck economy class on British Airways.
yeah, that's a good one. North America, I think domestically, I personally love JetBlue. A lot of people keep hating on them, but I think they have the most legroom on the vast majority of their fleet compared to any other US carrier.
And it's mostly a young and modern fleet. And if it's not so young and modern, then they've spent the money to have a very sensible and young and modern refit to
Exactly.
the fleet.
And in my experience, they have by far the most consistent cabin crew in the US, very friendly. I mean, for long haul, a lot of people I know say Delta is the best option of the US-3. And I think, I've seen some photos and evidence to reflect that. Now let's go to a more fun
Have you
part.
Have you flown Delta in economy on the A350?
I've only flown them domestically in economy or to...
Okay.
The last time was 2021. I flew from Quito to Atlanta in 767 economy, but I find the legroom dreadful. So I don't know. Middle East.
I think JetBlue for North America. I think JetBlue, especially the fact that they fly transatlantic as well in economy. I think it's probably better than risking ending up on a United 767 into Heathrow, for example. Every time I see that, I'm like, my God, again, not too bad for those in business because there's Polaris and whatever, but for in economy class, that's going to feel old. And it's noticeable. I was on public transport and this American family were telling the British family that they were visiting, she was like, yeah, my screen didn't work and I just stared at the wall. She was like, and and they were like, oh, who did you fly?
She raw dogged her flight.
God. Yeah, that awful phenomenon. Anyway, so she said, she just stared at the wall and they said, oh, who did you fly? She was like, United. She's like, and it was so old. She was like, it was so old. And I was thinking, oh, that would be a 76 or a 777. Anyway, heard where she was flying from, quickly checked on flight radars. It was 76.
But you know what I love is that as soon as an airline installs mood lighting, they can have the most rickety old cabin. But as soon as the lighting is blue, people are like, this is nice. So that's the thing that Delta does, I think, to really stick out. That people go, whoa, this looks so nice. But they're on like a 30-year-old 767.
Okay.
In the Middle East, I review the economy classes there all the time, but I would say, to break it down very simply, Emirates A380 is just the best, but then Qatar Airways comes before the Emirates 777, most of Qatar Airways fleet. So it's like, go for Emirates A380 if you can, otherwise Qatar Airways, then Emirates 777, then the rest. So
I would reorder it. I would say Qatar Airways A380 upper deck economy is like traveling in premium economy, especially how they tend to allocate either members of their own privilege club frequent flyers up there or members of frequent flyer programs across the One World Alliance. And the crew, I think, really know how to deliver a personalized service up that I only ever have experienced myself, and also hear really positive feedback from economy class travel on the A380 upper deck on Qatar Airways. So I would put that ahead of Emirates in that scenario. But then at Emirates, of course, you've got more chance of flying on A380s because they send them just about everywhere and they have a huge fleet of 380s. And then you've got the other carriers in the Gulf, which maybe deserve a mention or maybe not.
I mean, okay, I have never flown Saudia economy, but I hear it's very, very good.
I don't know about very, very good. I've heard it's okay. I mean,
okay,
hang on. Choose your adjectives. You said two varies. I'm like, okay, so why is it not in your position
because
number one?
Good is still not great or fantastic. Good is still just above okay.
Doesn't very, very good make it great? Don't two varies equal a great?
Okay, I don't know. Etihad, I feel, is below Emirates and Qatar. That's what I can say
Agreed.
about that.
Yeah. And I don't know about these fixed wing things that they put on the A380s when they were in their Nicole Kidman era. I mean, they're just... it is a bit interesting. A bit funny.
So in Asia, Singapore Airlines for Southeast Asia, North or East Asia, the Japanese airlines are incredible.
Of course.
And they're the only airlines in the world who voluntarily put fewer seats per row than they could to make it
Yeah.
even more comfortable. So
And I had a chat in Toulouse with their lead cabin designer for Japan Airlines about the fact that they actively choose to reduce the seat count on board, knowing that Airbus have told them, for example, or Boeing have told them, you can have an extra seat per row. And I said to him, surely in 2024, this is a consideration for you guys now, no? And he cringed and he very shy and he said to me, no. The comfort has to come first. We would never do that to our passengers. And I'm
it's
like,
incredible.
okay, I'm about to call Lufthansa CEO and I want you to tell him on the phone what you had just said, because that's remarkable.
But what's so remarkable about it is that even the quote unquote world's best airlines, the ones we typically think of, Singapore Airlines, Qatar Airways, Emirates, they all go for the maximum seats they can fit in.
Everyone does, yeah.
It's only the Japanese airlines that do it. And the crazy thing is Japanese people are generally shorter than people who fly in Europe, for example, and in very good shape. So it's not like they really
True.
need the width.
So it looks
or the
looks
leg room.
even roomier when you look at a domestic flight of Japanese passengers.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand with stereotyping, but as you say, it's not like they're having to reduce the seat count to fit to a demographic that are on the larger side.
It's not like they
Actually,
have
it's the
Dutch
complete
passengers who are the tallest in the
other
world.
end of the spectrum. Maybe you were Dutch in a past life.
Maybe. But every time I fly a Japanese airline and I walk back to economy, I'm like, whoa, this is nice. Like, it almost looks like premium economy. And sometimes I'm confused. Where did the border go between premium economy and economy? Because it looks so good. And I've also flown it on Japan Airlines within Asia. Incredible. So if you're going to go with any airline and it's not an A380, those are the airlines to go with, really. There's one more story I want to wrap up with because we're running out of time that caught both our eyes in different places.
Yeah.
Do you want to share?
So I saw this on
interesting
Reddit
story?
where and I quite enjoy scrolling through Reddit these days. So I just think it's funny to discover I just feel like it's a nicer, slightly more intelligent version of Twitter. So there was a post on Reddit and it said, quote, "My husband and I have just finished a flight from Miami to Doha, purchased through American Airlines. I'm an exec platinum, but operated by Qatar. So of course there's a code share agreement between Qatar and American, and there's also all kinds of joint ventures in terms of how they share business. In this, you can book a flight with an American Airlines flight number, and actually the flight is Qatar Airways, much to the surprise, I'm sure, and the pleasant surprise of the American passengers. So he says that they paid a full fare business class. She said they paid a full fare business class flight, and it's from Miami to Doha, noting that the flight was fantastic, the service was great, but, quote, there were a shit ton of exotic birds being transported in cargo directly below us. I don't know how many, but the crew said it was, quote, a lot. The crew said they hope that the birds would settle down once they reach cruising altitude, but that did not happen. He said those birds screamed and squawked the entire 14-hour flight. I slept with earplugs and they still woke me up several times. Not what I expected from this flight. What response would you hope from American Airlines? Well, before we talk about the response side of things, it's not something you would expect, would it? That birds would be going ballistic in the cargo hold, so ballistic that you could hear them for 14 hours.
I'm just surprised that the birds went below business class, because not in terms of them going below business over economy, but just the fact that don't they usually put pets or live cargo at the very back where there's, it's more like
I don't know if that is exact policy, because obviously it just depends on the aircraft.
Because, I just know that a lot of the time you see like maybe it's because it's more like special luggage goes in that little compartment in the back, so they unload animals individually. But
no, because for example, I'm imagining, for example, scenes of, I can see photos in my head of supercars like Lamborghinis and whatever being loaded into, and typically it's that second cargo door in front of the wing.
Yeah. Yeah.
on a wide body aircraft. So maybe they were there.
Yeah, exactly. For whatever reason, which is crazy to think. But this brings up the funny discussion of, obviously, I think anyone who's read about aviation has at some point seen photos of cabins filled with Falcons, which is only really a thing in the Middle East. This is not what happened on this specific flight, but
No.
it brings up the funny discussion. Something that View from the Wing writes about here is, what are the different policies on bringing Falcons on flights in the Middle East? So I've read...
Before you go through
Yeah.
the policies, have you flown on a flight with Falcons in the cabin?
Never. And I've flown...
I have
Yeah.
from Doha to Kuwait, and also from Muscat to Doha.
That's so interesting because, I mean, we both fly Middle Eastern Airlines all the time. So I'm quite surprised I've never
But it's
seen...
increasingly, I think it's just becoming a bit more rare. I haven't
very
even
old
seen or heard since kind of pre-pandemic. Both those flights I took were in 2018 and 2019 respectively.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that Etihad and Qatar Airways have policies on Falcons. Emirates does not, as far as I can see, which tells you the different demographics that maybe typically fly the airlines. So here Qatar Airways, like, this blew me away when I read it. So literally on Qatar Airways website, it says, you're permitted to carry one Falcon on board the economy class passenger cabin of an aircraft, and a maximum of 6 Falcons are permitted within the economy class cabin of an aircraft in total, in other words.
Yeah.
Etihad literally has a section under traveling with pets for Falcons as well. So they said Falcons are permitted on board all Etihad operated flights. You can travel with a Falcon for free as part of your cabin baggage allowance, which is crazy.
Wow.
So in economy, you're allowed 1 Falcon. In business, you're allowed 2. But then what is really interesting here is that you can also purchase a separate seat for your Falcon on both Qatar Airways and Etihad. So what happens then is, if you were to buy a business class seat for your Falcon, you're allowed 3 Falcons on that seat on Etihad. And on Qatar Airways, if you purchase a seat for your Falcon, you may also bring 1 dead animal that the Falcon has hunted, because that's a lot of the purpose of having Falcons in the Middle East, is that people fly to places like Central Asia. I find this quite horrific.
Central Asia, Morocco.
Yeah, to falcon hunt. So their falcons basically catch some prey. So that's just the most crazy thing I've heard, that someone would book a seat for their Falcon and bring a dead animal on a passenger flight with other people.
It's the animal that, now there's got to be, so this is on the Etihad website, right?
No, this
there's
is Qatar Airways, the dead animal.
There's got to be some kind of regulation there as to how they are brought on board. There's no way they could be brought into the cabin.
No. It says because the dead animal would be the carry-on of the Falcon.
Of the Falcon. So then there's got to be a way in which that is contained, right? There's
surely
some kind of secure container that doesn't, because don't forget also the challenge airlines have to navigate with flying into so many different parts of the world and across, for example, different areas of Africa, where they then have to ensure that they are not bringing or re-importing different, animal illnesses, disease, whatever. And so
for sure,
I can't imagine what would need to be required in order to ensure that they have that situated.
Can you imagine you're sitting in like a Q Suite quad with like alone, you happen to end up in the center, and then the seat next to you is just a Falcon. Like, how do you react to that?
Well, the Falcons, I've been on board with Falcons, unless they were very well behaved, and the owners were really comfortable with everyone kind of, can I touch it? Those requests and kids kind of seeing, and of course the Falcon had its eyes covered. They had that little hood on, right? So it wasn't aware that it was, it doesn't need to see that it's in an A320.
It doesn't know whether it's in economy or whether it's in Q Suite.
No, the owner's whispering into its ear, "Wallah, you are in first class." And that way it's more comfortable. But they were both super calm in my experiences, and there's some photos where you have many Falcons in the cabin, but there is a limit these days. I
Yeah.
think, as you said, it's kind of 6 is the rule of thumb, and it's just not becoming so common. I mean, I haven't heard or seen in ages. And also another important note is that you're not going to see this on Dubai, London, or on Doha, Paris, or on Abu Dhabi, Madrid. It's kind of intra-Gulf or intra-Middle East, wider Middle East / North Africa.
Yeah,
You know,
I guess that's probably why I haven't seen it, because I don't tend to fly those routes as much. But super fascinating topic nonetheless. And oh my God, I would just love to see some like American Karen board her flight from, she's going to Bali or something, from LA via Doha, and there's a Falcon. And, oh my God.
It can be arranged.
Yeah, let's do it.
With that, let's move into Q&A. I've got a note here from Chris. He says, "Hey Alex and Dan, I'm in Chicago with my best friend and her husband, and we flew Lufthansa. The crew were absolutely amazing, and overall it was a good flight. But after the meal service, the cabin entered into that pitch black night mode. He says it was a day flight leaving Germany at 9:40 in the morning, arriving into New York at 12:30 local time. This is such a weird thing to do." He says, "Love the podcast and greetings from normally Munich, jackpot, not Frankfurt." Chris, he says. An interesting note about this is that since I had shared my story on last week's episode, many people have written in to show both extreme ends, to show how when they were on a night flight, the crew were adamant about having it full daylight for the service and bright lights, and people were like, we just want to sleep. But then on a daytime flight where it was appropriate to keep the window shades open, they were insisting to close them, either by doing it on a 787 with the dimmable windows, or a lot of people were writing in saying that they had politely refused requests when a crew had walked past their row and said, "Excuse me, can you just lower the window shade, please?" And the passenger had said, "No, I want it open. I booked a window seat for the window view."
Yeah.
Of which there was no pushback.
That's good. But
yeah,
by the way, I just have to say, it's so funny that the Apple Gothenburg thing was also from a Chris. So we have 2 Chris featured in today's episode.
There we go.
Hi, Chris times 2. So this is a kind of cool one. Bobby from Queer Eye on Netflix. So, I mean, this is not really for the podcast, but I just have to share it as a bit of a flex. He agrees with me that Delta has managed to fool the US. He commented and said, truth. Into making Americans think they're premium. So that's a small note there. These are not questions. We just have anecdotes today. I have some other questions here. Max asks, what do we think Etihad must do to be a real competitor for Qatar and Emirates?
I think they would need to kind of re-strategize and realign with the goal of becoming a relevant member of the ME3, what was the ME3, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I don't think that they're interested in actively competing with Emirates and Qatar ever since they changed the strategy. They're not wanting to connect everyone via their respective Abu Dhabi hub and be the third competition airline to Emirates and Qatar. I think that where they've kind of gone off quietly and are focusing on being a little bit more boutique and financially sound, so therefore at least financially they're doing something right, I think we'll see the likes of Riyadh Air fill that void as the third most significant Gulf player. No matter what Riyadh Air say about how their intention is to bring Saudi Arabia to the rest of the world and the world to Saudi Arabia, it will inevitably be one of the transit hub airlines of the Gulf. And when they eventually publish where they're going to fly to, and that schedule is released, you're going to see a lot of those connections have been drawn up in a way in which can only be with the word seamless in mind, right? They're going to want you to be able to, of course, they still, the vision is still there for Saudi and for what they want you to do in Saudi Arabia. But yeah, I think we know what the plan is there with Riyadh.
Just before we end, this is kind of fun. Should we guess what Riyadh Air's first destinations will be? Just so we've said it.
That's a good way to end the episode, and also to have it on air so we can refer back to it.
And so we know they're listening, so probably they're not going to launch these just because we've said it.
You're so right. Right. So let's have 30 seconds right now where we write down, 3 routes?
No, 3. I mean, There's some
on,
that
what
are
do you want?
so obvious, but like, okay, how about
5?
in order? What do we think will be the first?
Ah.
Okay,
Okay.
we're gonna take 30 seconds and I'll
Okay.
cut and then we'll come back and
all
you'll
right,
hear it
okay.
immediately, guys.
Okay.
Okay,
all
what
right,
are
go on.
yours?
Yeah.
We've written
No,
them
no, no,
down.
you first.
Okay, I'm thinking just in terms of when they have one aircraft to maximize. Okay, perhaps they could actually launch 2 at the same time to optimize aircraft utilization, since they could do
Okay.
Europe and Gulf in once. But
Okay. So are you now about to list what you think will feature as their initial routes,
in
like
order.
their first? Oh, in order.
Yeah.
We can't do
So,
that.
so if I had to guess, I would say
Okay, the launch route.
London. I mean, okay, it's hard to get slots, so I don't know, but I said like London, Dubai seems like a good. They would do London, and then there's a long turnaround, so they send it to Dubai. They get 2 routes, good utilization. Then for number 3,
Of course, you mean Riyadh, London, and Riyadh,
yeah,
Dubai.
exactly. Then
Right.
for number 3, I said Jeddah, because I don't think Jeddah will be the first route, obviously, because it's not. It won't garner the same excitement internationally, but of course they're going to fly that. Number 4, Paris. Number 5, New York. I mean, I'm pulling that out of thin air, but for sure they'll serve all those cities sooner
Okay.
rather than later. What about you?
I'm going to go out on a gamble and be brave. And I think if they were willing to really shake things up, I think the launch route will not be London. I think the route launch, the inaugural flight, could be Seoul, South Korea.
Of all places.
Because I just think there's such a growing trend between Saudi Arabia and South Korea, and the growth of South Korean culture in Saudi.
You know-
and also I'm thinking cryptically, I've heard Tony Douglas mention in quite a few interviews how the kingdom is not linked with South Korea.
Yeah,
And
the
so I'm
one
just thinking maybe that's...
thing I'm thinking about that is that perhaps the flights would be a little too long for one aircraft. Like it would be a bit too risky
Yeah,
to
you
operate it
need-
with just one aircraft.
You need 1.5 for
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So, okay. Anyway, so that's my kind of rationale. Then I think Dubai, London, Madrid, because of the Atletico Madrid
Yeah, true.
sponsorship deal, and New York.
Okay, awesome. So quite
Yeah.
similar. And that
Yeah.
wraps up episode 50. 50.
50 feels like 15. Send in your questions for next week. I'm Alex LHR on Instagram. He's at the Nonstop Dan, and we'll do a longer form Q&A. We like it when we kind of build them up and then we can dive in. As always, leave your reviews. It helps the podcast being shared here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining us. We look forward to being with you same time, same place next week.
See you then on air. Bye bye.